Cinnamon, how'd you get in my mirror once again? And what's your plan to turn your back on another who needs a hand? Oh, do you understand? You were good enough, you were good enough, you were good enough to be my sons and daughters. You are good enough, you were good enough, you were good enough to follow me. You were good enough, you were good enough, you were good enough to be my sons and daughters. You are good enough, you were good enough, you were good enough to follow me. 'Cause we are called to love one another, and we are bound to each other. We are called to love one another, and we are bound to each other. Cinnamon, how'd you get in my mirror once again? And what's your plan to turn your back on another who needs a hand? Oh, do you understand? You are good enough, you are good enough, you are good enough to be my sons and daughters. You are good enough, you are good enough, you are good enough to follow me. You are good enough, you are good enough, you are good enough to be my sons and daughters. You are good enough, you are good enough, you are good enough to follow me. 'Cause heaven is here, heaven is now, heaven is here, heaven is right beside you. Heaven is here, heaven is now, heaven is all around you. Heaven is here, heaven is now, heaven is right beside you. Heaven is here, heaven is now, heaven is all around you. Heaven is here, heaven is now, heaven is here, heaven is right beside you. Heaven is here, heaven is now, heaven is all around you.
In this place, too broken, too far outside.
We tell the story of deliverance.
Not from this life, but for this life.
Tell of the love of God.
A love from which nothing can separate us.
Not life nor death.
Or anyone or anything in all creation. The salt of the earth.
Share these stories.
Benefit and blessing to all the world.
A bit of dust in a can. We all fall down, but then again, I never thought I'd see you like this. An empty glass, a golden ring, and all that's left me listening to all the things I should have said. The walls, they echo low. Everything is bought and sold. Everything is over now. All the silver and the gold, gave it away to complete my mission. Everything is bought and sold. Thought that this should end somehow. All my youngest turned to old. Now I'm looking for death to end my wishing. I was just a boy when I fell down. You refused to pick me up. I was just a boy when I nearly drowned. You refused to pick me up. I was just a boy. I was just a boy. Now everything is bought and sold. Everything is over now. All the silver and the gold, I gave it away to complete my mission. Everything is bought and sold. Thought that this should end somehow. All my youngest turned to old. Now I'm looking for death. Now I find another chance to count the minutes I have loved, and those I've wasted. The kids won't fight over grandma's Christmas dishes. Cause everything is bought and sold. Everything's over now. All the silver and gold, I gave it away to complete my mission. Everything is bought and sold. Thought that this should end somehow. All my youngest turned to old. Now I'm looking for death to end wishing our love is all and everything that you and I can offer up. Love is all and everything that you and I can offer up. Love is all and everything that you and I can offer up. Love is all and everything that you and I we can offer up. Offer it up with love. 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 Offer it up. Offer it up. Offer it up. Offer it. Love is all and everything that you and I can offer up. Love is all and everything that you and I can offer up. Love is all and everything that you and I can offer up. Love is all and everything you and I we can offer up.
Hey, good evening. If we haven't met, my name's Doug, and glad you're here. Our community meets on Sundays, 10 in the morning, 5 in the evening, at least one more week at 7, and then we'll take a little change for the summer. So nice to have you with us. It's a special day for a few reasons. One, there's some Canadians in the room. That's always a good thing. So when there's a greeting time, go around finding Canadians. They'll be very pleasant and polite, so it'll be easy to find. So we're glad they're here. But also, more importantly, Calvin is in the room for the first time. Calvin, has he been applauded for in a group? Is that his first? Fabulous. Yeah, he's doing like a good truck neck. Didn't overreact. How many days along?
We're on the 8th, so I guess so like 11, is that right?
We're on the 8th.
Yeah, Wednesday the 8th, we're having 2 weeks of it.
Yeah, a little 2 weeks. Yeah, that's awesome. Huh? Great news. Hey, it's also a big day. If you follow church calendar stuff, you might know that today is one of those religious holidays. It doesn't really cross over into being one of the popular cultural holidays like other ones. You know, Christmas and Easter and stuff. Those are kind of cultural holidays as well as Christian holidays. Today is just really a Christian holiday that if you follow the Christian calendar, you might know. It's called the Day of Pentecost. It's actually a borrowed day from the Jewish calendar, like a lot of holidays are. Jewish calendar had 2 really big ones. Passover, which a lot of people know about. Easter is connected to Passover. And then Pentecost, which was the one that came 50 days later. So the story in the Old Testament is that the nation of Israel finds themselves leaving Egypt. The Passover gets them out. Then, 50 days later, Moses goes up on the mountain and receives the 10 Commandments, this sort of deal between God and these people. And that day, the place shakes up on the mountain. Maybe you've heard that story. The wind blows. The voice calls out to Moses, gets the commandments. He's the spokesperson for God. Well, you fast forward a couple thousand years, and after the crucifixion of Jesus, that happens at Passover time, 50 days later, the followers of Jesus are celebrating Pentecost. And on that Pentecost day, they're not up on a mountain, but they're in this upper room. And in that upper room, things start happening that resemble the story they're telling. So they would be sitting around at a meeting like this and saying, hey, by the way, today's a holiday, it's Pentecost, and they'd be telling the Pentecost story when the place starts to shake, the wind starts to blow, the lightning starts to flash, just like the Moses thing, and instead of the call and the voice of God coming down on just one person, it comes down upon them all. And they all start speaking languages of the people that are in town for the Passover to Pentecost festival. That's this connection between the Pentecost story and Jewish festival. Well, a lot of Christians like to mark that as the start of the church, because that's sort of the day when it became clear that this is supposed to be an agenda of God through Jesus that doesn't apply just to the people in that room, but to all the world. Fast forward 1900 years or so, and land yourself in California on Azusa Street in 1906, and a bunch of people are sitting around in church meetings, and in 1906 they had taken all the pews out of the room because they didn't like how they met, and they met in a big circle in the round, and they invited people from all over San Francisco and Southern California, very multicultural area. They're all meeting together there, and things start happening like happened at the day of Pentecost. People start speaking in these other languages, and crazy healing stuff happens. So the people then took the name of that movement from the celebration of the Christian calendar, which was connected to the day of celebration from the Jewish calendar, Pentecost, and called themselves Pentecostals. So the Pentecostals of our age date back to like this is their holiday. So if any of you grew up in any of the religious traditions that would have taken them back to Pentecostalism, this is the big holiday in those churches. Interestingly, before those people were speaking in like spiritual languages that nobody understood, in 1906, they would ask God to give them the ability to speak or to understand languages that people would speak around the world, and that's how they knew where they should go to tell the story of Jesus. So 1906 to 1926 or so, there was a huge movement of people out of those Pentecostal churches that would get together at a meeting like this and say, God, if you want me to go to Venezuela, give me the language. If you want me to go to Africa, give me the language. And that's what they would do. So Pentecostalism spread all over the world really fast. And in the 20th century, it's one of the fastest growing expressions of Christianity ever. So all around the world, Pentecostalism is really active, and today's a really big deal in their parts of the churches. So we sort of joined together with them. Here, we have our own little version of the Spirit of God rests on everybody, and everybody gets to say things. We do that in lots of ways around this community, even though we're not Pentecostals like that. But frankly, if any of you pull up a language you've never spoken before, and that happens to you right now, you should let the rest of us know, because that'd be totally great. So like if that stirs in you tonight, don't hold that one back. That would be fantastic. So anyway, it's a nice, it's a big deal in the Christian church, and a big deal in the Christian calendar, and maybe you're totally familiar with it. By the way, that's also why we have a goose hanging above our heads in here. That goose was made at one of our art events where we were doing a Pentecost deal. We did like a Christmas thing and an Easter thing and a Pentecost thing. Christians in 300 in Ireland, the Celts, when Christianity was moving there, St. Patrick and that crowd, they referred to the Holy Spirit not as a dove, but as an untamed wild goose. So during the art installment, Michael made this goose up in our balcony out of paper mache, and it's too big to get out the building, so we're just going to leave it out there until it falls apart. So it's just sort of here, it's become a fixture in the building as sort of the imagery of the Spirit of God descending. So if you ever wondered, or if somebody ever asked you why there's a giant bird in here, we're not giving people the bird, we're trying to reflect to people the story of the day of Pentecost. So, glad to have you.
Get away who said goodbye? Who was the one put that t-shirt on you? Religion is a lie. Think life over. Was it all for the best? Take your message, put it in a bottle or on your chest. If you're too close, you can read this. Don't get too close, please don't read this. La da 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 da. La da da da. Hey, my father wasn't always kind. Hey, my mother stood on the side. Hey, my sister, yeah, she almost died. She's still living with a lot of pain inside. If you're too close, you can read this. Don't get too close, please don't read this. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. If you're too close, you can read this. Don't get too close, please don't read this.
One of the regular parts of our Sunday community get-togethers involve communion. It is that practice that's actually borrowed, again, from those ancient Jewish festivals. This one's borrowed from that Passover activity, where part of the Passover meal carried on in the Christian tradition, and we carry it on in our own way. We invite everyone, this is one of our Pentecostal acts, we invite everyone to share in communion and to be the deliverer of it. In some people's traditions, communion is specialized for people at a certain level of devotion after confirmation, or people that are members of a certain tradition or church could take communion. Maybe you've been in a church. My wife grew up in a church Lutheran tradition where non-members couldn't take communion, so I'd have to scoot aside when the family would get out of the pew to go down front and collect it. And that was their way that they did it. They kept communion special and made sure that only people who had the commitments of their tradition were going to take it in their place. Here our tradition is the more the merrier. Everybody can take. Everyone's invited to not only take, but to give. And in some traditions, that's a little different. Maybe you're familiar or grew up in one where only certain people were the ones who could say the words at the beginning or hand the elements to the other person. That activity was specialized and was significant and stood out as being meaningful. We think communion's so important that everybody should do it all the time. So just different ways that the tradition of Christianity has done it. And here we've chosen to do it in the house party style. So you'll find communion sitting around. There's bread on the tables. There's juice everywhere other than right behind Brent and Victoria on the red couch there, sort of in the middle. There's a bottle of wine there. And then there's gluten-free choice over here, but I should note the gluten-free is made of almonds, so there's nuts in it. So if you're gluten intolerant and nuts sensitive, you're going to have to, I don't know, do something else. For you, Cheka, I don't know what to do. So we only have the nut version of it tonight. We have this reading that we do. It's sort of as a way to grab the biggest picture of the story that we can grab. And if somebody wants to be our reader tonight, you might notice that the screens have a really different look to them. This is the Clorox brand over on the south side and the leading brand over on the north side. So it's much clearer if you look over on the other side. So if you want to be our reader, anybody like to be our reader tonight? We'll have one person read it instead of doing the big group reading. Somebody like to be our communion reader? Timmy. Would somebody else say I will? Okay, Cheka, here you go. Read it off the brighter one, it's louder.
We take communion by serving and eating bread and wine together, in community with followers of Jesus around the world and throughout all ages. We enter this mystery proclaiming the faith of Jesus as the Messiah, whose life, death, burial, resurrection, ascension, and ascending show the love of God for the world, frees from sin, and initiate the kingdom of God in our world in new ways, for the benefit and blessing of all the world.
So get up, serve each other, take as much or as little as you like, or just stand up and say hello to somebody if that's more your way.
Tired of waiting, anticipating all those lies. You beat me once, won't beat me twice. You cut a man right down to size on your wrecking ball line. Shot down. You're around. Hold down those sounds. Tempting creatures, tempting features, slaves to the eye. I wanna live it right. You take me down just by walking by on your wrecking ball line. You're swinging on a wrecking ball line. hearts are breaking, and not just mine. You're not so strong in the morning light. My blood is gone, now just let me die on your wrecking ball. You're swinging on a wrecking ball. Well, I was shot down in the middle of the night, and I'm looking for the gun, but it's nowhere inside. You're around in the middle of the night, and the gloves are coming off. I'm prepared to fight. Hold down to the middle of the night, 'cause it's gonna take a while for me to get out alive. Those sounds in the middle of the night, they keep shooting at my brain with the bullet and the bang. Bullet and the bang, 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 bullet and the bang of your life.
May the life of Jesus be in you. If you haven't eaten and drank already, you should do that, and then we'll circle up and we say this little thing as a blessing to each other. So grab hands and be as close to a circle as you can, but don't feel pressured into weirdness. Let's say this together, huh? May the God of hope We love the little sweeties around here, but we know this room doesn't work so great for them, so we let them have spaces that do work better for their little bodies, and we'll see them in a bit.
I just needed something. On my beaten road lay piles of my footsteps, long drags in the snow. It's hard to walk alone. Mother, won't you come to me now? Father, won't you bring me out over? Overload, overload. My mind cannot hide it. My faith has worn down. I was running beside it. It chases me now. Over, overload, overload. Seemed like last time the sun wasn't so hard on my eyes. I don't want to go outside. Let there be an army, let there be an army, let there be an army, let there be. Long drags in the snow, it's hard to walk alone. Mother, won't you come to me now? Father, won't you bring me out?
These are announcements. This is my first time doing announcements. Doug, you're going to hate me in about 2 seconds. Okay. So we do lots of things together. Can you go to the next one? Okay. So community dinner this week. We're going to have pizza. Anyone here want to talk about it?
All right, so there's a little piece to this. We're buying this building, and we are inviting people to participate in the purchase of buying this building. We've been doing this for a couple of months, and you might know we do lots of things in this building that are really great. There were people in here till 2 in the morning last night. There was a big work day yesterday. Different groups use it. Neighborhood and community uses it. We have healing practices with massage and counseling and acupuncture and a yoga studio. And some people work here on Thursdays and other days of the week. Like, it's a very active building. To own it is a very good thing for our community, we think, and allows us to save lots of money over time when we're not renting it and owning it. So we're going to buy the building. We're ending phase 1 of asking the people of our community how much their contributions can go toward the purchase of the building. And we're going to end that in the next month or so, including this Wednesday night, by calling through people who've either indicated that they want to give to the building purchase but didn't say how much, or people who haven't said one way or the other. So we're going to have a little phone-a-thon and call through those people. If you'd like to be part of that, come on Wednesday night. We're going to have dinner here. We're going to eat together, have some fun, give out some phone numbers, and let you make those calls. If you don't want to be part of that, there's 2 ways to not be part of it. Like, if you don't want to get a call, either grab one of these forms on the table and either write, not planning to contribute at this time, then we won't call you, or fill it out for the amount you will contribute, and then we won't call you. So that's a way not to get called. Say, don't call me, or indicate your amount. Or if you don't want to be part of it, then don't come Wednesday night for dinner. I guess you could probably come and have dinner and nobody would throw you out. But anyway, that's what we're going to be doing here in the building on Wednesday night. Okay?
Great. Okay, loaves and fishes.
So Loaves and Fishes is happening this month, May 28th, Tuesday. This is when we get together as a community and prepare and serve a meal for homeless and working poor people in South Minneapolis. And we'd love to have you be involved in 1 or 2 ways. One is bringing food, and we've almost got all the food that we need. There's just a few more items that we need, and that is this sign-up. There will be instructions forthcoming if you sign up for where to bring your food and when to drop it off. And then we need volunteers as well. In
many of you heard this last week, but I'll just say it again. I have a yellow Labrador named Rowdy, and I want to train him for therapy work to go to hospitals and stuff. So he's 76 pounds of love. He's really gentle, likes to lick a lot, but I was trying to get him assimilated to children because I particularly like him to see children. Right now, they're so novel, he thinks of them as little like lollipops. And so it's like if you have kids that love dogs or are really comfortable around animals, then it's great if you want to come up after the gathering and hang out here and pet Rowdy because he loves that. If you're uncomfortable with it for whatever reason, please come talk to me and let's discuss what we can do about that. But otherwise, I'm going to start bringing him to church. So, Corey, Rowdy, here for pets.
Sounds good. Is this me too? So you can fill out the info form next to the giving boxes. There's one out there and one out there. And if you want to get added to the weekly email, and then you'll get announcements about what all's happening throughout the week. And it's very informative. And you can also donate as well if you feel like it. And there's the website information. And that's it. And then now stuff scrolls or no? During the
Yeah, during the greeting time.
Okay, so then now, and then do I say the people get up? It's my first time.
Yes, you can. You go
So,
ahead.
there's two Janelles who are both here, and I think we are going to have a baby. And so I'm just filling in. This is my first time. Thank you for your patience. So we're going to get up for you Canadians. What happens is we used to have kids running around, and we felt like, we can't even talk to people. So our new thing is we send the kids out, and then now we get up and we actually go say hello to people and genuinely check in rather than having kids around all the time. So they'll have more information will be up on the screens if you're feeling awkward. You can just pretend like you're really focused on what's happening up there instead of talking to people. Or talking.
Yes.
Now we talk. You got it?
Nudge my heart out of bed. Take my coffee medicine. Open the blinds you closed last night again. You could have been an astronaut. The way you look down on us, you could have been an astronaut. The way you look down on us, all our lives in gray glass jars. Hold me in your serpent light. Wrap it all around my body. All our lives in great glass jars. Tear the labels off the walls, and all of life's a rocking chair, back and forth and over air. Lifting anvils with my hands, while you stroke your violins, singing those songs you try to hide again. You could have been an astronaut. The way you look down on us, you could have been an astronaut. The way you look down on us, all our lives in gray glass jars. Hold me in your serpent light. Wrap it all around my body. All our lives in great glass jars. Tear the labels off the walls, and all of life's a rocking chair, back and forth and over air.
We have two options during sermon time. One is the same room here where we're going to do a reading of the book of Mark. Not the whole thing, even though it'll feel like it tonight, but sort of the end of the 14th chapter. The other option is to participate in a meditation and reflection and guided prayer time downstairs. Kathy is leading this week, and each week different people do that. So down in the yoga space, if that's more your vibe, you'd like to be down there 20 minutes or so, Kathy will be doing the guided meditation. It's her first time leading it, so if you've never done it before, it'll be great for everybody to do it together for the first time. No problem on that one. So if you want to head down there, or if at any point during the conversation up here, if you stay, you've just had enough and you want to get down there, don't feel like hurting anybody's feelings. I didn't write it, so feel free to head down there. And I think Alex Eric is out there. Hey, you want to step in for a second? You know, Alex currently living in Belize, and he's getting married in like a week. Yeah. In like 2 weeks, taking this year. So, just want you to know he's here too. You don't have to stay with him. Oh, no. But if you want to talk to Alex before you have to duck out tonight, we'll be downstairs. Wait, yeah, tell people what you do. Yeah, oh, yeah, tell us what you do.
Okay. I just have to see.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Alex. I think probably about 30 or 40% of you know me here. Been in Belize for the last year and a half, working for a study abroad program, and work for an environmental study abroad program. And so we bring students from all over the states and Canada, and they come and they study with us for 3.5 months. And yeah, so this is my home, place to be here in Minneapolis, and it's so good to be back and see you all. And I got engaged a couple months ago and been married in 2 weeks, so it's kind of crazy. So it's good to see you all.
So what kind of things do you do in that program? What is an environmental program or what?
So we're like a faith-based environmental program. So like we have another umbrella organization. It's called Christians for Environmental Stewardship. And so the core of our program is sustainable development, because we're in a developing country of Belize. Biology, so we have a stream ecology course, a forest ecology course, and marine biology course. Belize has the great, the second largest reef in the world. And we also have a theology course, and I think that's it.
And if people want to work with you, can they go to Belize and do stuff?
They can. If you were a college student at Bethel, I don't know if there are some Bethel students here. Bethel is one of our partner schools, and so if you're an undergraduate, you can come study with us and hang out with us.
What if you just don't have anything going on in life and you'd rather be in Belize? Is this something you could go do? Could you just go hang out with you?
Yeah, you can give me a call. We'll hang out. We'll be in the garden. We'll work in the garden. And
Good.
We'll swim in the river. And
We've got Canadians here. Do you take Canadians?
we do.
Can anybody find a wife there, or just you?
It's pretty easy.
Well, great to see you. So yeah, glad you're back. So we're reading together the book of Mark. We're in the 14th chapter. I've suggested that one of the ways to read the book of Mark is to read it as a television series, and that each of the readings we do would play out like an episode, and inside of each of those episodes there would be these different scenes. If you're more Bible-y, you're thinking the book of Mark is crafted around a set of peripheties, a set of these stories that lay into one another and make sense as a mosaic as well as an independent story. Tonight's reading is going to include 5 of these scenes or peripheties, and many of these storylines are famous in their own right, and most people only hear them separate from one another. And there's something about watching the whole episode, which we'll do tonight. So, the bright side and the not so bright side. So here we go. Read if you like, and make comments whenever you're ready.
Jesus said to them, "You will all falter in your faithfulness to me. It is written, I will hit the shepherd, and the sheep will go off in all directions. But after I'm raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter said to him, "Even if everyone else stumbles, I won't." But Jesus said to him, "I assure you that on this very night, before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." But Peter insisted, "If I must die alongside you, I won't deny you." And they all said the same thing.
So it begins with this really big and sort of dark beginning to it, doesn't it? You're all going to falter in your faithfulness. I mean, one of the questions that we've been asking through the 5 months or so we've been reading the book of Mark is, why did the curators or the author or authors of the book of Mark choose the sections that they did? Why these? If it's true, and I think it is, that the book of Mark was one of the earliest of all the gospel-like writings, and the earliest of the 4 that we keep in the canonized Bible of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John,
why did this story become part of the telling? Why a story of people falling away? If it's true that this was written in sort of the earlier years of Christian history's development, and if it happened in Syria, that part of the world that we would now call Syria, but in that region, why would they tell a story of betrayal, denial, people turning away, struggle, failure in the midst of it? Maybe there's something good about hearing these stories read in a way where you see this desire of people, I won't, and this reality of, yeah, you will. I was struck on Tuesday and again this morning during the 10 o'clock, Tuesday night we did a sermon discussion before we talked about this stuff. A couple of Tuesdays ago we read this, and I was struck by this notion that Jesus says, you're going to all falter in your faithfulness, but I'm still going to Galilee. Galilee means out of Jerusalem, so not in Jerusalem, but into that other area. Maybe there was something in the early Christian telling that wanted to be reminded that Christianity didn't spread only because all the followers thought it was really, really great. Right? There was something else. Like, no, actually, the people closest to this whole thing, they were the least faithful of them all. Maybe there's something about faithfulness that isn't required in Christianity. Maybe you're supposed to hear in this story that it's okay if you're not the most faithful all the time.
You know, I think it, with Pentecost, that the strength didn't really come until God delivered the Holy Spirit. You know, there's lots of human intention, but you really see a transformation of the disciples. You know, that then most of them, go along until their death.
Yeah.
So they're, but that transformation for some of us can be slow in coming.
Yes.
But I do,
Yeah.
believe the Holy Spirit is there for us
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? These people are called here, they're disciples, they're apostles, they're the closest to Jesus, and they're going to falter in their faithfulness. Not always, some point that's not the case, and not in every situation, but their lack of faithfulness, you don't see in the story of Jesus who's saying, like, you shouldn't have anything to do with me if you're going to be faithless. Depart from me, you faithless. In fact, the very ones that he says, you're going to be faithless, he then invites them to come along with him the whole way. Really an intriguing part of the story. Maybe there's a reason why the Christian gospel that was going to first be told wanted to include these things in it. All right, so then it picks up a little bit more. They all say, hey, all of us, we're not going to fall away. And then we get this part of the story. So that's sort of scene one, scene two.
Jesus and his disciples came to a place called Gethsemane. Jesus said to them, sit here while I pray. He took Peter, James, and John along with him. He began to feel despair and was angry. He said to them, I'm very sad. It's as if I'm dying. Stay here and keep alert. Then he went a short distance further and fell to the ground. He prayed that, if possible, he might be spared the time of suffering. He said, Abba, Father, for you all things are possible. Take this cup of suffering away from me. However, not what I want, but what you want.
Here you have a storyline where it's Jesus who feels despair, is anxious, feels like he's going to die. We now have current terminology for that. It's called a panic attack. That Jesus is one who's stressing that bad about this. This has been really disturbing writings for some people. If you've developed a religious system as Christianity did, where you have a Jesus that doesn't deal with the issues of everybody else, sort of a supra-human Jesus, a sort of God Jesus, God-human blend that doesn't function like the rest of humanity and is super special to all the rest of humanity, this kind of thing sounds really odd. It's been one of the pushbacks in the Christian narrative for all these years to say, look, Jesus' struggle and suffering was real as a real human being, and we shouldn't tell the story, in my opinion at least. Maybe some others have a different opinion, we should share that.
that we shouldn't tell this story in such a way that you end up with a Jesus that doesn't play by the rest of the rules as the rest of us. As if Jesus is about to go into faithful sacrifice and isn't bothered by it. Instead, it happens not just once, it happens twice, it even happens 3 times in this narrative. And the early writers of the Gospel of Mark, and Matthew and Luke and even John, choose to include that in the telling. And they're not saying everything that happened, right? They're obviously selecting parts of the story that tell the gospel the way they want it to be told. So there's something in this telling that they want people who are hearing this to be hearing. You've got Jesus in a full-on panic attack right here. And he says to his disciples, stay with me.
Well, what I kind of want to see is Jesus as the second Adam. Here, you know, here Gethsemane is called the Garden of Gethsemane, and
Nice.
Adam was in the Garden of Eden, and Jesus is doing a reversal of the first Adam's weakness and falling into sin. Here he is a human. He's weak also, but he did not sin.
Yes, so he says, whatever you want, I will go with. As opposed to the story of the first Adam, if you remember Genesis, in the first Adam, there's that kind of betrayal of the eating of the fruit that had been forbidden because of the
And it
trickery.
was the woman that needed to do it.
Yeah, he blames it on the woman. That's never gone over well. From first story to last, that's never a good reason. It never works. Yeah, so now here you have Jesus in this other story, I will do what you want. So you have then at the beginning of this, the faithlessness of the closest followers and the doubtful, anxious despair of the most faithful one. There are a lot of people who've been told that if you were faithful, if you believed, if you were truly the son or daughter of God, you wouldn't be anxious, have despair, and feel like life is overwhelming to you and you're going to die before the circumstances even happen. That wouldn't exist in you. Very intriguing conclusion in the Gospels. Okay, then anybody else want to say anything?
Well, this is not really what you're saying, but I've just been thinking a lot about prayer lately, and so whenever Jesus prays, I always find it really interesting. I just think, one, I mean, did he pray out loud so that people overhear that? Is that how they know how this prayer, like that whole thing? And then how is it passed down is really interesting to me, just to think about. And two, just that, I don't know what I think about prayer, but I just think it's interesting that he just had these short, direct statements like this. That, I don't know.
And don't let this thing that I know is going to happen if it doesn't have to happen. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so the storyline is he takes them with him, says, sit here while I pray. That prayer happens, and then this second part of this scene is this.
He came and found them sleeping. He said to Peter, Simon, are you asleep? Couldn't you stay alert for 1 hour? Stay alert and pray so that you won't give in to temptation. The spirit is eager, but the flesh is weak.
It goes on like this.
Again, he left them and prayed, repeating the same words. And again, when he came back, he found them sleeping, for they couldn't keep their eyes open, and they didn't know how to respond to him. He came a third time and said to them, will you sleep and rest all night? That's enough. The time has come for the human one to be betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let's go. Look, here comes my betrayer.
So it happens 3 times. Now, a lot of people make these parallels and correlations between the 3 denials of Peter and the 3 times of coming back. And so 3 days in the belly of the beast, the 3 days in the ground, the 3 times of completion. So maybe there's some big imagery going on here. But it's not as if one should hear this as, well, Jesus had that little moment where he had a tough time and, he shook it off and kept going. He goes back once, twice, 3 times, and each time the ones with him are sleeping. Now maybe there's a big metaphor here, right? That like what God is up to, even those closest to God sometimes miss because they're not alert, because they're sleeping. Maybe for some of you, you feel this overwhelming sense to sign up to help somebody in a 24-hour run 2 weeks from today. And you're wondering, I will not be the one that sleeps all night. I will stay up and run 1 hour with you. Anyway, you can do that on the clipboard out there. But that's not what this is about. This is about this big story of alertness, sleeping, the spirit is eager, the flesh is weak. That might actually, Michael, I thought you'd chime in on that. That might actually have something to do with the Spirit of God is prompting you, but the system of religion is weakened. It might not just be that like your mind is strong and your body's pathetic. It might be something more grand than that.
Well, I just kind of see that, 3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah.
But God's rules are not like that.
That's interesting. It's not a 3 strikes you're out, is it? Because if you think about what he says back here to Peter, right? He's like, Peter, not only are you going to deny me once, but this very night you're going to deny me 3 times. And then in the prayer, what does Jesus do? What does Jesus do? Father, let this cup pass. Take this cup from me. However, not what I want, but what you want. Once, twice, 3 times. As if you're supposed to hear that kind of pleading to get out of something isn't a disqualifier. Maybe for Jesus and for Peter. 3 times of denial doesn't mean you're done. Yeah.
Yeah, that spirit is willing, the flesh is weak. It just struck me in a good way today. I've never thought about it this way. I think about it now as I think Jesus is speaking to himself as well. It's not necessarily a condemnation. I've always heard it as a condemnation, like God, the flesh is weak.
Interesting. So maybe he's not only saying this to Peter, maybe he's saying, I need you to stay up with me because my spirit is eager, but my flesh is weak.
Because he's human. I'm stuck in this human body that has limitations. Can't run for 24 hours.
Can't do that.
So,
Speaking of betrayer, here we go. So, comes my betrayer. So then in the story, there's a denier. There's a, how did it put it? There's a anxious, despairing, sad, feeling like they're going to die with Jesus. And there's a betrayer. It's like in the first times of telling the Christian story, you're supposed to say, that's the makeup. I think it's good when a community like ours reads this because it makes all of those people like us feel like maybe we fit in this story a little better than you might think. Sleepy, deniers, faithless, panicky, anxious, sometimes betrayers. We're in good company. Yeah.
This whole thing kind of reminds me of Paul's statement, where he says, I do not do what I want to do, the things I want to do, I don't do.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting difference because disciples, they're like, no, we're going to follow you to the end, we'll die for you.
Yeah.
And they'll betray him.
Yes.
And then Jesus has a different thing. He doesn't want to go to the cross. He's sitting there talking, like, I don't want to do this, let me out of it. And then he ends up doing it anyway.
Nice. It reminds me, when you say that, remember that parable that Jesus says that this family has 2 sons? The one son says, I'll do it, and then never does. And the other son says, I'm not going to do it, but then does do it. And Jesus is like, which of the sons is more faithful?
Right.
Kind of feels a little bit like that, huh? Like, I don't want to, but you do it anyway.
I wonder if that's like the second religious.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, we definitely want to do the right thing, but they don't actually.
They don't do it.
They don't follow through.
Well, I think all of us are subject to, when we're comfortable and we feel fairly safe, to think of ourselves in the best light possible. I would never betray Jesus, but then we forget how it breaks down really fast
Yeah.
when somebody's arrested or whatever.
Can't see a whole lot.
Things happen to us in our everyday life that suddenly we're broken down. We're not so comfortable in our safety nets have been worn out. I think often we're surprised. I'm surprised at the terrible things we do.
So then the story picks up. Here comes the betrayer. Scene 3.
Suddenly, while Jesus was still sleeping, Judas, one of the 12, came with a mob carrying swords and clubs. They had been sent by the chief priests, legal experts, and elders. His betrayer had given them a sign. Arrest the man I kissed and take him away under guard. As soon as he got there, Judas said to Jesus, Rabbi, then you kissed him. Then they came and grabbed Jesus and arrested him.
At 10 o'clock, Leticia said that in Puerto Rico, where she's from, everyone greets with a kiss. That's the customary greeting, and it's more intimate, it's closer kind of a thing. So that had a way of ringing to her that might be a little different than us. We don't understand that sort of idea of kissing someone as a greeting. When I was a teenager and got into Christianity, there was a musical group called Petra, and they had a song called Judas Kiss. And it was like, conjure up the idea that like every time you do something that would make Jesus sad, that it would be like betraying him with a Judas kiss. And there was something to a teenage mind and adolescent sort of kind of faith that like you didn't want to be that kind of betrayer, especially not doing it with a kiss in that sort of intimate sense. I don't know that that's what this is picking up on, whether we're supposed to think about the greeting in some culturally strange way, or if it's just, this is the way that Judas used it, customary, as if no big deal going on here, there's a guy over there kind of way, like in a sly fashion. Any thoughts on that? Let's review age over.
It's interesting that they didn't know who Jesus was.
Yeah, like they couldn't find him.
Right.
They come with a mob, they got clubs and swords, they need Judas.
He's
to
the
be
guy
like,
in white with the beard, the
Yeah.
Jew over there,
Yeah.
that's him. Well, they all look like
they all look like that.
Like there was nothing to, like, he wasn't
Yeah.
glowing or
Yeah.
something or anything like that.
So it makes people who look at this say to themselves, maybe what the tellers of the story are wanting to say was, the mob didn't take Jesus only by the work of the elders and the experts of the law and the priests, but it was one of the insiders that was clearly in on it, and this is the way you tell that story. Because the idea that like you couldn't figure out which one it was, even if it was a little dark. If Judas knew which one it was.
Josh?
Is that what you were saying?
That is exactly what, yeah, that's what I think so interesting.
See, that's why I just be quiet, let the people talk.
Wise
All right, so they arrest him, and then you get this interesting little scene in scene number 4.
One of the bystanders drew a sword and struck the high priest's slave and cut off his ear. Jesus responded, "Have you come with swords and clubs to arrest me like an outlaw? Day after day I was with you teaching in the temple, but you didn't arrest me. But let the scriptures be fulfilled." And all his disciples left him and ran away.
There you go.
One young man, a disciple, was wearing nothing but a linen cloth. They grabbed him, but he left the linen cloth behind and ran away naked.
I mean, that's just a full scene right there, right? They show up with these clubs and mob mentality. One of them pulls a sword and cuts off someone's ear. Like, either he's a significant marksman and knew what it would take to cut off the ear alone, or these people, this thing was so ginned up in emotion that someone was willing to kill someone else. This whole thing is already opening up into a very violent kind of circumstance. Right? Someone swings a sword as if they're wanting to kill someone. We talked in the 10 o'clock gathering that in this gospel, Mark's, it doesn't name the sword swinger as Peter. The other Gospels, one of them mentions Peter. So now you have Mark not saying Peter, but one of the crowd, or one of the bystanders swings. And then as Victoria pointed out at the 10 o'clock, Jesus doesn't heal the guy's ear, and Jesus doesn't say the thing in this one, which I like, which is that pacifist sensibility of live by the sword, die by the sword, the kingdom of God's not going to be built on these things. None of that happens in Mark's telling. Now, if you've wondered why people said what I said earlier, which is that the Gospel of Mark very well may be one of the first Gospels written, it's because of stuff like that. When people who look at these things and study it for lots of ways see a Gospel that has the story with less details or with a different amount of, with different details that aren't as specific, the assumption is that the gospel that has the least amount of details was written first because, the theory goes, no one is going to take the story and pull out the details and think it makes a better story. Right? But rather, you might tell the story in some ways of like, oh, not only was it a bystander, it was actually Peter. And then Jesus didn't want it to be like that, so he said this other thing as well, as opposed to, you know what, skip the whole thing about the live by the sword, die by the sword. That's not really advancing the narrative, right? So the reason people think Mark was written first is because it's shorter and has less specific details. So then, 10 o'clock this morning, Matt says, you know, I gotta tell you, this is the kind of stuff that really makes me unsure about the Bible. Because when I read in one gospel details that are so specific, and in another gospel that says it wasn't Peter, it was a bystander, they're different. And what do you do when you carry that kind of difference? And if you can't trust that it's going to give you the right details on this, for him, he's like, that's the part that makes me just think, I don't know. If I can't, the way he put it was, if I can't believe that, why should I believe any of this stuff? That led us, yeah.
I once read something, it was like there's three sides to every story. There's my side, your side, and then the truth.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, which I guess that's what I always think when I'm reading the Bible, because there are just different versions because it's different people's perceptions.
Yeah, it's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
There's some song from the 90s that was that way.
I think so.
Yeah, I remember that song too. Yeah, wait, so if you were to look out front at the signs that are out there, there's like this brick sign, this is Solomon's porch on it, has a lily or something on it. And below it, it has a meeting time, gatherings 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock. Well, currently we don't have meetings at 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock. We have meetings at 10 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 7 o'clock. And next week we're going to have meetings at 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock, right? So the sign is wrong on the bottom. The sign above it says summer gatherings times, 5 o'clock and 10 a.m. So yesterday during the workday, I was standing out there with Dave Holder, and I said, Dave, we have this sign that says gatherings at 6 o'clock, because it used to be in the summer, we would have gatherings at 6 o'clock. Well, we can't put that one up, but I don't want to leave the one up at the 5 and the 7, so we took this sign that had 6 o'clock on it, turned it around, and it's white. It's not blue or green colored like the rest of the sign. It's this ugly, just straight white. It wasn't painted, right? So we put that on there and said, well, is that better? And then Dave Mulder had this great insight. He said, well, we can leave that sign off of, we can put that sign on there and it'll be more accurate. Or, with the white blotting it out, or we can take the sign off of there and it'll be more beautiful. So what do we want? More accurate or more beautiful? Now, not every time do you compete accuracy with beauty, but sometimes there might be a way of telling something that's more beautiful, even though the details aren't exactly right, but it captures the story. So it reminded me, I have this friend who he and his wife, when you ask them how they met, his wife will tell you this beautiful, elaborate story about how they met. The dinner they went to, the date, the kiss, the whole thing. And then he will say, actually, that was our third date, but she always says this. And then she'll say, well, it's because it was the third date where I really met you. That's when the other dates we were just figuring out if we wanted to know each other or not. That was the date that I really met you. He's like, but it wasn't our first date. And there it is again, right? Like, the more accurate, when did you first meet, or when did you really get to know each other's story? So that might be this version of the two things. So reading the Gospels, at times, Mark has different details because it's telling another story and seeking to be accurate in a beautiful way, not accurate in another way. Or maybe people heard different stories, or maybe people embellished the second one, or maybe someone dropped details out because they didn't want Peter to look like a, somebody committing assault and battery, being a potential murderer. Maybe that was something they didn't want to put in. Who know? All we know is the story we've got includes two different versions.
Well, the story, it needs to capture the spirit. Once it captures our spirit, that's what it's supposed to do. Kind of the details are not, they're important, but they're not critical.
Yeah.
The husband-wife metaphor, it was that capturing of the spirit that made the difference that way.
I was wondering, why did they run away afterwards and not when they saw the guards come up? The temple police come up and they're itching for a fight. At least Peter is.
Yeah, that would have been a good time to run.
So it kind of makes me think like when Jesus says, "But let the scriptures be fulfilled," like it could have got me anytime, but whatever. Like somehow it was code to them, like, "Holy crap, he's giving in.
Yeah.
We're not going to fight this out.
Yeah.
You know, so we got to flee."
If they're taking it, we're running.
Yeah. So like it was like a realization, like, oh, this is a spiritual thing that's he's all along, and not let's overthrow Rome.
Kind of along that same line. It strikes me, I'm just thinking about myself. I'm up for fighting till I die.
Yeah.
I'm not up for surrendering and going to jail.
So they're seeing Jesus as surrendering, and you're like, I get the idea that if he's going to give up, we're running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll come back and fight. But
I'm willing to fight, but I don't want to surrender.
And then the other thing I was wondering about the stories and the accuracy is part of the problem that, you know, in our day and age, we still want to fit everything into enlightenment rationalism.
Yeah.
It's all mathematical and all this systematically put together. The guys writing this, I don't think really had that in mind.
Right.
And I'm not sure rationalism is the model of the universe for every situation.
Right. I'm listening to this really interesting book called The Half-Life of Facts, How Everything You Know Will Expire. Really interesting. And it just says facts are not permanent. They all go away.
We're talking about approaching this like a television show, and like anything else. This slide has those two elements of violence and nudity. And I'm not really sure this story is suited for our audience.
Yeah, now the kids are back. We should probably change the violence and nudity part of this thing. And the young disciple who was apparently thought that they go to the garden for a toga party, some guy who was wearing linen with nothing underneath it. It was a very interesting picture in its own right. We call that going Canadian in the United States. I don't know what you call it in Canada. I don't know why they call it going Canadian. I'll just say we do. So we'll pick up that story. I don't mean the running away part either. I mean, so we'll stand up. Here's a little blessing. We sing to each other and for each other, and then we go.
And there is still hope, please believe. Yes, there is still hope, please believe. Believe that we can change. Believe that God is just believe that we can change. Believe that God is just believe that we can change. Believe that God is just believe that we can change. Believe, oh, believe, just believe, just believe.